I'm Jordan and I'm 28. I'm single and I've pretty much always been the odd one out in my family. Not 'cause I was a bad kid or anything, but just because I never seemed to fit in with their expectations. Unlike my cousin Rachel, I didn't become a doctor. And unlike my big brother Nathan, I never got involved in the family business. I didn't even stick around. I moved away, built myself a calm life. I do freelance writing, travel a little, and mostly just keep to myself. After all these years of feeling like an afterthought, I didn't really expect much from them anymore. But I have to admit, when I got that invitation in the mail, a thick, creamy card with my name in gold, it got to me. Nathan was getting engaged to Ashley, and they were throwing a party. For a second, I felt like maybe I was actually included, like maybe they finally saw me. I hadn't talked to Nathan much recently. We'd send a text here and there, mostly just quick stuff like happy birthday or how's work. But nothing real. We hadn't had a real conversation in over a year. So when I opened the envelope, saw the fancy writing, and realized it was an actual invitation, not just some group message or a passing mention, I thought, maybe things are changing. Maybe this was him trying to connect. The engagement party was on a Saturday evening at some fancy vineyard, about a half-hour outside of town. I spent way too much time trying to decide what to wear. Something nice, but not over the top. I wore a dark blue blazer, a white shirt, and dress pants. Simple, clean. I even got them a wedding gift, had it wrapped right there at the store. It was a fancy Dutch oven from their registry, pricey, but I wanted to get them something nice, show I cared. As I pulled into the gravel lot, the sun was setting, painting everything in this warm, golden light. It felt like a movie scene. For a second, I pictured Nathan's face lighting up when I walked in, maybe him giving me a hug, saying, "You came." I imagined Ashley smiling, saying, "We're so happy you're here." Maybe, just maybe, I'd sit down at a table and feel like I was part of a family again. But as soon as I stepped inside, my aunt grabbed me, practically glued to her wine glass. "He only invited you because he felt sorry for you," she whispered, her breath reeking of Chardonnay. "Ashley said they had no choice. It would have been too obvious otherwise." I just stood there, frozen, still holding the wrapped gift. "What?" I asked, convinced I hadn't heard her right. She looked at me like I was some lost puppy that wandered into the wrong house. "You know how it is," she said, shrugging like it was the most normal thing in the world. "It's not personal or anything. We just didn't think you'd actually come." That stung way more than I thought it would. I looked past her into the reception hall. Round tables with fancy tablecloths, flowers everywhere, little twinkling lights hanging from the ceiling. Everyone was already there, all happy and chatting, glasses clinking. Place cards were all set out nice and neat. I went around, slow and looking at each table really carefully. My name, nowhere. I walked all the way around twice. No seat, no card for me. Nobody even looked up. Nobody said hello, not even Nathan. So there I was, awkwardly standing by the bar for a bit, holding that gift box like it was my lifeline. I probably looked ridiculous, or worse, like I'd wandered into the wrong wedding. My chest got all tight, and this awful mix of shame and disappointment just welled up inside me. I told myself to not get my hopes up, that it didn't matter, I was just being polite. But it did matter, way more than I wanted to admit. I turned around without saying a thing and just walked right out. I didn't even leave the gift. I took it back to the car, put it down in the passenger seat like it was a person, and sat there in silence. No crying, no screaming, nothing, just sitting there staring out at the gravel driveway. Then I drove home. I didn't post anything online, didn't text anyone. I just went completely quiet. The next morning, the doorbell rang at 8:12. I hadn't even made coffee yet. I opened the door in my sweats, hair a mess, and there he was. Nathan, my brother, still in his suit from the day before, but no tie, looking completely wiped out. "You didn't have to make a scene," he said, all flat and emotionless like I'd set the whole place on fire. I just blinked. "A scene? You blew up and walked out. Everyone saw it." I let out this short, bitter laugh. "Nathan, there wasn't a single empty seat for me. Nobody even acknowledged me." He fidgeted. "You could have just stayed, found a place to sit, I don't know, maybe even chatted with someone. I wasn't supposed to be there, right?" I asked him, "You didn't even plan on me being there?" He didn't say anything for a second. Then he mumbled something about Ashley handling the seating, saying he told her to keep it small. He said he didn't think I'd make a fuss. So I was invited. Out of pity, I whispered. "That's what Aunt Linda said." He groaned and rubbed his eyes. "She talks way too much. She wasn't supposed to say that." I backed away from the door, feeling completely drained. You should go, Jordan. Seriously. If you're waiting for me to apologize for making a scene, it ain't happening. He looked stunned, like he never saw that coming, like I'd betrayed him instead of the other way around. This is exactly why we don't talk much, he grumbled. No, I said, my voice way colder than I meant it to be. We don't talk because you only think of me when it's useful, when you need to look good by inviting the rest of the siblings so nobody can say you left anyone out. He didn't say anything back, just stared at me for a bit before heading down the porch steps to his car. As he drove off, I looked at the kitchen table at his engagement gift, still wrapped, still untouched. I didn't even know what to do with it anymore. Give it away. Take it back to the store? Just drop it off, she said. That whole thing, it just stuck with me. Not just Aunt Linda's hushed tone or the missing name card, but the shocked look on Nathan's face when I wouldn't go along with it, when I refused to act like the forgotten kid, happy just to be close, even if I didn't belong. But I wasn't about to let them get away with that, not even close. Because if I wasn't family, then I didn't owe them a damn thing. And I had something they'd all conveniently pushed out of their minds, something they were going to need really, really soon. They were going to know who I was, name card or not. For a few days, I just went off the grid. No texts, no social media, just nothing. It wasn't to be mean, it was self-preservation. I needed room to breathe, to process, to get rid of the sting so I could function again. But under the surface, I was thinking, remembering. You see, what none of them knew, because they never bothered to ask, was that for the last 3 years I'd been working behind the scenes on something huge for all of them Grandpa Thomas's trust. Before he died, he'd made me a trustee. Quietly. No big announcement at dinner, no official letters, nothing like that. One day, when I was visiting him for the last time at his old place in Vermont, he pulled me aside. He said, "You're smart, Jordan, and you've got a good heart. I want you to help make sure the money doesn't mess up the family." I was totally clueless back then. I figured he was just going on about taxes and stuff. But then, the paperwork started pouring in. The lawyers, the endless meetings. I figured out the system. I learned the trust had all these specific rules, and most importantly, that the big chunks of money weren't just given away willy-nilly. There were strings attached. Things like help with school, help with paying off a mortgage, even business loans. Those needed approval from the trustees, which was me, and a company in Boston. Nathan's whole business, that consulting thing he always talked about at family gatherings, had gotten a big loan from that trust 2 years before. He didn't know I was involved. Grandpa asked me to keep it quiet, said it'd be better that way. But now I was starting to feel like that promise was over. A week after the party, I got an email from the company. There was a new request for money from Nathan. A big one. He wanted more cash to grow his business, including renting a second office and hiring someone part-time. His request was super wordy, full of business talk and blurry predictions. But what really caught my eye? He was up against a deadline, needed the cash in 2 weeks, or this huge deal he was working on would go poof. Usually, I'd have just okayed it, no questions asked, money would have been sent. But this time, I hit reply and asked for a face-to-face. We met at a little coffee shop downtown, neutral territory, you know? I picked it on purpose. It was quiet, public, and close to his office. Nathan showed up late, still all dressed up in his fancy suit, but he was totally off. He looked stressed, kept checking his watch, and tapping his fingers on the table. "Thanks for meeting," he blurted, sitting down. "This is about the money, right?" I nodded, took a sip of coffee. "Yeah, it is." He leaned in. "So, can we get this moving? I know your company's usually slow, but this is a rush job." I watched him for a sec. "You didn't know I was a trustee, did you?" His eyebrows shot up. "What?" I said. "I've been one of the trustees of Grandpa's estate since he died. I've seen every single request, every report, every loan." He just went silent. His face went white, then red. "Seriously?" he finally said. "Seriously," I replied. He let out a big sigh, trying to compose himself. "Okay, that's a surprise, but whatever. Look, you've seen the numbers, it's a solid investment." I leaned back. "Maybe, but here's the deal, Nathan. This money isn't just free for the taking. It's all about what Grandpa believed in, family sticking together, being responsible, and being upfront." "Come on, Jordan," he said, getting annoyed. "Don't get all personal. This is strictly business." "You made it personal," I said, keeping my voice even. "It was that party, the way you treated me, the way your fiancé just ignored the seating chart, or lack thereof, and how you couldn't even meet my eyes. He started to defend himself, but I cut him off right then and there. Then you had the nerve to show up at my house, trying to make me feel bad, saying I made a scene. Like, seriously, I just walked away quietly, but I could have made a real scene. Nathan leaned in, his voice dropping low. So, this is revenge? No, I said, calm as could be. This is about accountability. He looked like he was about to flip the table. But we were in public, and Nathan's precious image was way more important to him than anything else. So he sat back, forced a smile, and mumbled something about talking to Ashley, smoothing things over, apologizing if that's what I wanted. That's not what I want, I told him. I want to know that if you're going to keep using this trust fund, you'll treat the people involved with a little more respect. His jaw tightened. So you're holding the money hostage until I play nice? You can call it that, I replied. I call it protecting Grandpa's legacy. He jumped up, nearly knocking over his chair. You're unbelievable. And you, I said quietly, should be more careful about how you treat people, like they actually matter. He stomped out. I just sat there and finished my coffee. Later that week, I sent the firm a full report. I detailed all my concerns about their funding request, the questionable expenses, the unclear return on investment, and the complete lack of transparency in their previous funding reports. I didn't exactly say no, but I suggested they pump the brakes, do an audit, take a harder look basically. Anything to keep those funds from getting released right away. I didn't hear a peep from Nathan for 2 whole days. Then one evening my phone rang. It was Mom. Jordan, she said, her voice like ice. What the heck are you doing? I was taken aback. Hi Mom, good to hear from you too. Don't be smart, she snapped. Nathan told me you're holding up the trust money, he needs it. I got up and went to the window, watching the rain patter against the pane. So, now you decide to call, I muttered. You've always been so oversensitive, she sighed, like that explained everything. You didn't even try at the party, you just walked out, you humiliated us. I humiliated you, I echoed, by not staying at a table that wasn't even set for me. You could have said something, she retorted. Made it work, that's what families do. I let out a harsh, empty laugh. No, Mom, what families do is make space for each other. What families do is notice when someone's being left out. What families do is care. You all made it crystal clear where I fit in, or rather, where I don't. There was a pause. Then, she said, so this is revenge then? No, I said. This is me finally drawing a line in the sand, and if you don't like it, maybe you should think about why. I hung up before she could get another word in. But I knew that phone call was only the first wave. Because the minute the money stopped, people who usually pretended I didn't exist were going to come crawling out of the woodwork. And not for the reasons they'd say. It took less than 2 days. By Friday, my phone was blowing up like crazy. It went from being totally ignored to ringing off the hook. I had missed calls, voicemails, and texts that started out nice. Hey Jordan, can we chat? Then, things got a bit nasty, with lots of guilt trips. It was Nathan at first, then Mom again, and then Aunt Linda. Even my cousin Rachel, who barely spoke to me in years, was suddenly all, let's get coffee and catch up? Right. I didn't bother answering any of them. Instead, I sent everything to the Boston firm that was handling the trust and asked them to start a formal review. I wanted a record, something official. I didn't want to mess Nathan up, but if he was going to use Grandpa's money, it had to be done the right way. And I wasn't going to be pressured or sweet-talked into backing down. The trust wasn't some kind of family cash machine. It was meant to help, not to enable. And let me tell you, enabling was the one thing my family had mastered. Around that time, I started getting little hints from back home. My old buddy Daniel, who still worked at the credit union, sent me a text. Hey, just so you know, heard your brother's project got put off. He's saying he's got funding problems. You doing okay? I told him I was fine. Actually, I was better than fine, because for the first time in ages, I wasn't just the quiet one in the background. I was in charge. A week later, the repercussions really kicked in. Nathan showed up at my place again, but this time I didn't even open the door. He knocked once, twice, and then it happened again for the 3rd time. I stood there, peering through the peephole, arms folded, and my heartbeat was steady. I know you're in there, he grumbled. Come on, Jordan, don't do this. He stopped for a moment, then said, you're gonna ruin everything over a party. That made me chuckle under my breath because he still didn't get it at all. It wasn't just about the party. It was about all those years of being subtly left out. The birthday dinners I never got an invite to, those family vacations where I found out through Instagram that everyone was having a good time without me, and the inside jokes at my expense that nobody ever even thought twice about. The party wasn't the beginning. It was just the breaking point. I watched him from the peephole as he stood there, then he just turned around and left. No voicemail, no apology, just complete silence. And then, the real shocker. Ashley texted me. I almost didn't even recognize the number, but the message was quick and polite. "Hi, Jordan. I know things are a little weird right now. Would you be up for meeting, just you and me?" I took a while to think about it. I didn't owe her anything, but something about the message made me curious. It didn't feel fake. It felt worn out. We ended up meeting at a little tea shop close to where I lived. She was already there when I arrived, wearing jeans and a sweater, no sign of her usual fancy socialite act at family gatherings. "Thanks for coming," she said, and she sounded sincere. I sat down, still cautious. "What did you want to talk about?" she sighed. "I'm not here to ask for anything or to pressure you about the trust. Look, I just need to say I'm sorry. I was completely taken aback." I blinked. She glanced down at her book. "I totally messed up at the party. I should have made sure you had a place to sit. A real seat. Not just because Nathan told me to invite you, but because you should have." I didn't say a word. I just listened. "I figured you weren't bothered by anything." She confessed that you're not the type who's into big gatherings. "Nathan always said you were content doing your own thing, but when you walked out like that, I realized maybe we've all gotten you wrong." I cocked my head. "So you didn't want me there?" She seemed embarrassed. "At first, no, but not because of you. It's because I didn't really know you and Nathan well. He talks about you like you're some faraway, unpredictable wild card. He made it sound like you'd either bail or cause trouble. I know now that's not fair." I sighed softly. "I didn't cause any drama. I just left." "I know," she said quietly. "And that hurt more than if you had caused a scene. That really threw me," she went on. "You quietly leaving made people start wondering. Why'd you leave? Why wasn't there a chair for you? Why wasn't there a picture of you with Nathan?" Even my parents noticed. "And some of our friends, it just looked bad." I crossed my arms. "So I'm a public relations issue now?" She shook her head. "No, you're a wake-up call." We just sat there for a second, silent. Then she said something I didn't see coming. "I want to make this right. Not to fix anything with Nathan, not to fix the trust, just to fix this." I was still kinda withdrawn, still wary, trying to make sense of everything. "You shouldn't be treated like you're less important," she'd said, "especially when you've been holding things together more than any of us knew." I didn't commit to anything that day, but I did thank her for being straight with me, and I left with one thing swirling around in my mind. Maybe I wasn't the one who needed to change. The next day, Nathan called again. This time I picked up. "Hey," he said, his voice sounding exhausted. Not mad, not gloating, just worn out. "Hey." There was a long silence. Then Ashley was in the background. "She talked to you?" "Yeah." "I'm not good at this," he mumbled. "I know I've screwed up a lot." I didn't say anything. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he continued, "about how I've treated you, how we all have. I always figured you were okay on your own, that you didn't want to be involved. So I didn't push, didn't ask, didn't give it a second thought." "That's convenient," I said. "Easier to think someone doesn't want in than to own up to leaving them out." He went silent. I could hear him breathing out on the phone. "You're right." Another pause. "Look, I'm not asking you to sign off on anything. Not anymore. I just want to talk properly. Maybe get some lunch, just you and me, no pressure." I didn't respond immediately, because for once, he wasn't trying to tell me what to do or defend himself. He was just showing up. And maybe that was the beginning of something, but I wasn't going to drop my defenses completely. Not yet. It was the same brother who'd left me out in the cold at his party, like I wasn't even there. The guy who only noticed me again when his money dried up. So the big question was, did he actually care about me, or just what I could do for him? It was my turn to make a move, and I had a plan. I didn't jump at his lunch invite. I told Nathan I'd think it over, and I really meant it. Because let's be honest, saying sorry is easy. A few "I'm sorries" and "we messed ups," and suddenly everyone pretends everything's fine. But I wasn't looking for pretend. I wanted the real deal. And real takes time, real takes showing me, so I waited. A few days went by, then a whole week. No calls, no frantic messages. It was strangely calming, actually. I figured maybe Nathan had given up, thought my silence meant no. Then one morning, a letter showed up. Not an email, not a text, a real letter. Handwritten, 3 whole pages. It was from him. I sat at my kitchen table with my coffee and read the whole thing twice. It wasn't perfect, no, Parts of it felt like he was still trying to excuse himself, still trying to explain away all those years of ignoring me, of shutting me out. But underneath all that, something felt real. He talked about the pressure of taking over Dad's business. How Mom relied on him, bought into the whole "he's the good son" thing. How he'd been bitter about me being able to walk away from it all while he was stuck doing what everyone expected. Okay, so I told myself I didn't care about him, because facing that I did was just too hard. I saw this guy, someone who just lived life his own way, fearless. Instead of, learning from him, I just judged him. I made him the outcast because I couldn't handle not being in the in crowd. That really messed with me. He ended the letter saying if I never wanted to talk again, he'd understand. But if even a tiny part of me wanted to try again, even if it was clumsy and slow, he was there. I just stared at those last two words, "I'm here." It didn't magically fix everything, but it was a beginning. So yeah, I said yes to lunch. We met at that little diner we used to go to when we were kids. He totally picked it on purpose. I could tell he was already there, nursing a black coffee, looking all nervous. It was crazy, sitting across from him in that old booth, that vinyl squeaking under us, the smell of pancakes and bacon. It was like no time had passed at all. But everything had changed. We talked, but not about the stuff you'd think. We didn't dive into the trust issues, or that party, or even the letter, not right away. We talked about silly stuff, like how that old jukebox was still there, how Dad still refuses to get a new phone, how Rachel tried to get famous on TikTok with her dog in sunglasses. We laughed, and it felt real, not forced or fake at all. Then, slowly, the conversation got serious. He asked about my writing, my travels, and my last relationship. It ended a few months back. I was curious, so I asked him about his business, about Ashley, and if he was truly happy or just going through the motions, like ticking off items on some invisible family checklist. He kind of stalled, then finally mumbled, "I don't know." That, more than anything else, showed me he was really trying. We ended up talking for hours, 3 to be exact. When it was over, it wasn't this big emotional scene. No hugs, no tears, no promises to be best friends forever. We just said, "Let's do this again sometime," and I actually meant it. But that wasn't the whole story. There was still this huge trust thing hanging over everything. Even though Nathan had made a real effort, his business plan was still a mess. The review I'd asked for turned up some seriously questionable expenses. Nothing illegal, but it was sloppy, unprofessional, and definitely not the kind of thing Grandpa would have approved. A few days later, the firm called. They were like, "So, what do you want to do?" And in that moment, I realized I didn't want to screw him over. Revenge wasn't my goal. I just wanted him to take responsibility for his actions. So I called Nathan, laid out what the auditors found, and gave him 2 choices. Fix the proposal, completely transparent with every detail, or forget the funding. I figured he'd argue, get all defensive. But he just said, "Fair enough." Then he paused, and this is the part I never saw coming. He asked, "Will you help me fix it?" We spent weeks buried in paperwork, in meetings, on endless phone calls. I showed him how the trust board looks at proposals, how to present things, what to avoid saying. It was super awkward at first, but things started to change little by little. It wasn't just like we were brothers again. We were a team, a real team. People started talking, of course. Mom found out eventually. She didn't say a word at first, just kept quiet. Then, out of nowhere, this Sunday afternoon text popped up. "Dinner tonight." No explanation, nothing extra, just that. I stared at my phone for like 10 minutes, honestly. Finally, I texted back, "Why?" she said, "Because I owe you an apology." I didn't go that night, but I didn't cut her off either. Because, like I said, fixing things takes time. Ashley and Nathan sent out new invites for their wedding. Same people, same place, but totally different feel. This time, my name wasn't just there, it was at the very top of the family list. And inside the envelope, a handwritten note from Ashley. It said, "We'd be honored if you came. There's a seat saved for you, seriously." And you know what? I went. The wedding was gorgeous, so elegant and thoughtful. And guess who was the first person to see me? Aunt Linda. But this time, she looked totally embarrassed. "Jordan," she said, trying to smile. "So glad you could make it." I grinned back. "Didn't think I'd actually show up, did you?" Her face got all red. "Well, of course we hope so," she mumbled. "I actually have a seat this time, right?" I asked, walking past her. I found my table 3, right by the dance floor. My name was on a fancy white card, all engraved and stuff, and next to it, a tiny card that said, "Thank you for holding us accountable." Crazy how things work out, huh? It all began as this pity invite, a total slap in the face. But somehow, it morphed into something I never expected. I wasn't the afterthought anymore, the one always on the outside looking in. Still, I didn't crave all the spotlight. I just wanted to be noticed. And finally, it happened not because I caused a big fuss, but because I made a call. I stopped saying sorry for just being around these people who never shined any light on me. No more letting guilt run my life. I started speaking my mind, removing myself when I needed to, and then coming back when I wanted to. Because sometimes, leaving quietly can really make a statement. And sometimes, the chair nobody saved for you is the one everyone remembers.